Coming back on the air.
Johnny?
You're still afraid.
I'm not afraid.
There wasn't a sign of life left.
We've got to do something.
Why don't you just keep calm?
You're telling us we gotta risk our lives just because somebody might need help.
Yeah, something like that. They dragged you out there and beat those things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Haven't you had enough?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
That clip never gets old. I could watch a loop of it for hours. Hello, everybody. Here we are at another Nightcast. And tonight is a really dear to my heart group of people that came to my rescue early on. And I guess, I don't know, various ones. I think Mr. Kevin Christ was the first. And that was around 2008 or maybe even late in 2007. He'll know better. I'm not a good one about those times, but this rather remarkable group of people came together completely out of nowhere to bring something forth, you know, to in this particular case, save the chapel, along with build this group of people that, as I said, I didn't know anybody before. Kevin was the first person I met, and then there was just an explosion of people that are now my very dear friends, but back then I didn't know them. And I wish I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and mention every one of them. I'm sure a lot of names will come up in the next hour or so, but just you fans that came together and made the Living Dead Fest what the Living Dead Fest came to be, which in my mind was it rocked horror in 2011 when we were really in highest of gear, you know, with getting the fundraiser together. So why don't I just bring everybody else on and let's get to talking, because I'm sure it's going to be a wild one. Everybody's prepared in their own head of like what they might say or what they might do, but what's actually going to come out, I think, is going to be far deeper than anybody could have expected. So let's bring the ladies on first. Miss Sandy, as the group knew her, Sandy Trapp. How are you, Sandy?
Good. How are you?
You're looking good. You got some light on your cheeks now. We can see who you are.
Yeah, I brought the lamp a little closer.
Great. So then we have the duo of Mr. Joel and Miss Chris Wodarcy.
There we are.
There's Joel. Where is Chris? There's Chris. Hello, Chris. Chris was and still is, in many cases and many times, my biggest supporter. How she put up with me, you know, for all those years, and my temper tantrums and my need to have things done now.
I broke her in for you, Gary.
But somehow we managed to get by that and remain friends. So now that we got rid of that, we'll bring on Mr. Terry Callan, who we're really happy to have with us tonight.
Hey, man. It's really good to be here.
Yes, there's Terry Callan wearing one of his own hat designs, I might add.
Of course.
we're going to kind of get into the chronology of it, of how everybody met, but Terry just was one of the people that just jumped in right from the very beginning, and there were a number of artists, but Terry was like just so prominently there. Terry did, I think, every poster that we ever did for the whole time the Living Dead Fest was going, and probably ruined him on art. I feel guilty all the time because, you know, we had to do things that were fresh and things that were new, and when we were still walking on eggshells about actually calling it Night of the Living Dead anything, you know, because of legalities and this, that, and the other thing. And so I never realized the torture that the poor man was put through by having what was one of his all-time favorite horror films, and the legacy of it, and all of a sudden the image and the exposure to the public from this point on was going to be all his. And I took it for granted that was easy, but I'm sorry, Terry. I apologize profusely.
You didn't bring anything on me.
that I ruined you for art.
No, not at all.
So then we have another person back there. Let's get him up here, and that's Mr. Kevin Kreis, who actually ended up inheriting the Living Dead Fest and moving it on from there. But Kevin was the first. And again, we go over this every time we talk about this, and I don't remember exactly. Oh, I think it was Rick Reifenstein or somebody. Whatever.
It was actually an article in the Butler Eagle that caused me to find you, and it was a really small little blurb, and the headline was "Thousands may gather in Evans City for a zombie festival." It said zombie festival. It used the word zombie festival, and it said, I might even said tens of thousands. It was just a blurb that Rick Reifenstein, I guess, spoke to somebody, a reporter at the Eagle, and they would just mention that. And then my ex-wife, my wife at the time, saw it in the paper, and at the same time, just by coincidence, I was building this, you know, what was to become the Living Dead Museum in the mall. Just like Gary, not knowing anybody, just doing it all by myself. And this one article brought me to get a hold of Gary about what's going on in Evans City. I'm doing this thing in Monroeville. We should be doing these things together. So that's how it started.
So that takes care of Kevin. So who should we move to next? We've identified the fact. Well, let's go to Joel and Chris. As I remember it, not knowing either one of you, I got an anonymous, well, not an anonymous, but I got an email from a person that I didn't know, who said, "Hey, my husband's a pretty good photographer. Would you have any use for photography in what you're about to do?" And it was like, oh boy, let's see this hack's work. and how am I going to get out of it? And lo and behold, you know, she showed me some samples of Joel's work, and I go, "Are you kidding me? I mean, are you really serious about this?" You know, we will make Joel the official photographer for the Living Dead Fest, and that's what happened. I mean, Joel to this day is, you know, he's the official photographer for the Living Dead Fest that doesn't exist anymore. Well, it does exist. It just isn't active. And then it turned out that Chris was, you know, became, you know, my gal Friday, if you will, and I'll relate a story. We'll introduce. I think that both Sandy and Terry came to us through Kyra. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, she kind of got the gears moving on that for me too. because I had,
Okay.
I don't know how much you wanted to hear the backstory, but yeah, I initially had approached Russ about it, and it was actually pretty funny encounter because he was at the Monster Bash, and I had a table set up with some of my artwork, and I walked over. I think this was probably maybe the second or third year that you had been doing these festivals, and I went up to his table with some of my artwork and kind of fumbled my way through it, but I was basically saying like, hey, I do this kind of artwork, really like to be involved. I didn't know how to get a hold of you, and I knew that since he was your brother, maybe it would get through the grapevine. And
of course it didn't.
Well, it was funny because, like I said, we kind of miscommunicated, and I think he was just like, okay, those are nice pictures, and handed them my way. And I thought, okay, well, that was a little humiliating. So I just kind of went back to my table and thought, all right, well, maybe I'll try and get a hold of him later. And I ended up relaying that story to Kyra, and she said, I'll message him. And then next thing you know, it got back to you, and the rest is kind of history.
Yes, it exploded. Yeah. Well, so I'm not you. So you knew about the well, in the early years. It wasn't until 2011 that we had a website, or not even a website, a Facebook group, which thank heavens for that. Is prior to that, I was communicating, via email to people.
Well, that's how it really made it possible for me to get a hold of, even people like Kyra and you guys, to
right. Email this was before Facebook was a thing.
Yeah. I remember the early, like what Kevin said, just seeing like a flyer or a Butler Eagle article about the very early shows, but unless you had someone's direct contact information, there was really no way to get a hold of anybody specifically.
Well, the point was I had no idea what I was doing, in the way of anything, and Sandy and Chris can tell you that. I think Sandy, when did I meet you first? Was it at the Strand?
I think it was at the Strand. I mean, I had seen you at a convention here and there, and that's where I met Kyra, and we became friends. Was at conventions, and then she's the one that mentioned this, and that's how I got involved, and it was the Strand, and that's also where I met Chris and Joel for the first time.
That was it.
Right. Well, that was. I mean, could there have been? Well, first of all, we just have to take a minute to say that was like one of the first events that the Living Dead Fest was doing, and we had nothing organized because you and and Chris weren't on the scene yet. And I don't know what, I came to the Strand and I had no idea about anything. And I think I had some pictures maybe, or some
old t-shirts.
Old t-shirts. No.
No,
what did I have? Whatever I had, you guys picked up on it and said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll do ticket sales on that somehow."
Right.
And
you did 50-50 tickets, and they put some baskets together too, I think, didn't you?
Well, that was later. That wasn't that.
We didn't do that.
This early Strand screening was when I met a lot of everybody also. Like, it was just, and I don't remember what the purpose was. It a fundraiser for the Strand, or was it just
it was
it was the original chapel fundraiser.
No, it was before that.
No,
I thought it was before the chapel fundraiser became a thing.
No,
there was an early
I don't think so.
No,
it was definitely the first chapel fundraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because no, that's why no one knew one another, and we had, the only reason that we were doing a fundraiser was, for all these people, and it blew me away that that was when we met Trish and Gordon Martin, and we also met Dean from Detroit, you know, who was also a friend of Kyra's. Prior friend. I think Kyra probably should be on this.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
She brought us all together.
Well, we'll do something with Kyra, but that that's just another.
The very first one for the chapel. Absolutely. And I love you dearly, but you were only charging like $2 to get in, and I figured you're not going to get anywhere at $2 a person.
Well, and that was it. There wasn't anything else. There was nothing else organized, nothing to sell, nothing. But that's all of a sudden when, you know, the light went off, and it was like, oh, these events are not just social events. These events are set up to, you know, raise money. And somehow out of that, you and Sandy did raise some money. I don't know what you sold or raffled or
anything that wasn't nailed down.
Yep. If we found the second up on the floor, we sold it.
But that was what was so cool about it, because all of a sudden it was something, you know. But before that event that night, it was just all people talking like we're talking now, never really in the flesh or anything else. And again, Kevin, I knew you because we went back 2 years from that, you know, when in 2008, when the fest actually started and we had the first screening. But and so all of a sudden there was, after that, the light went off and it says, oh my God, we need flyers, we need posters, we need t-shirts, we need, you know, every imaginable thing that we could sell. And that's, I believe, when you fully connect. Now, Terry, I can't remember this, and don't be mad if you were, but were you at the Strand?
No, that's when I come in probably right after that, because I remember getting a hold of you right as this was all starting to just kind of just go above the, hey, what a cool idea phase, you know, where you were actually starting to kind of turn it into something. That's when I think I connected to you.
I could have sworn you dropped off your prototype of the poster.
And Jill and the kids were there. I remember meeting them.
I don't think you stayed. You
oh no,
there were more than one Strand screenings like this.
Yeah, I think that
we're starting to mix them together. One. There was several.
Okay.
Where in the timeline does it fit in that film that we were shooting at the cemetery when Terry? That's really where I got to know everybody.
That was at the beginning.
Yeah, that was before the screening.
That was before we were saving the chapel, because there was 2 years. I mean, there was really 3 years before the fundraising didn't start until 2011, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
Because that project is where I met Chris and Joel. That's absolutely the first time.
That was after.
Yeah, that was at the cemetery. That was after the movies, though.
That was after
Joe Barbarisi.
I think it was
because we met Joe Barbarisi at the movie, and then that's how we hooked up to help him with the movie. So.
Yeah, so that was definitely. Yeah, I wasn't at that original Strand one that you guys had. There was it was definitely a later screening.
I think your wife was there.
One.
But Terry, how did you know about dressing up at the cemetery with your family to be in that film? Where did you get connected to do that?
Probably
that's where I met you too.
I honestly can't remember. It must have been through the the group, the Living Dead group, where
it was a Facebook group,
or maybe Chris or somebody sent me a message, hey, Joe's doing this, do you want to be involved? It was probably one of those kind of deals, because that was very early on. Like I said, I can't even remember if the poster was even, and
I don't think so.
Kevin Smith was a part of that, and that's when we met him.
Andrew.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, that I met there for the first time was at that. That cemetery movie.
It was Chris's birthday. The first time I met you all at the cemetery. It was. I brought her a birthday cake.
Oh,
I missed that event, which is a really weird thing. I don't know. I have no idea why I missed it. I just didn't think. I don't know. I have no idea. All these people came together, and I wasn't there.
It wasn't yet a part of the fundraiser for the chapel, and it wasn't yet. It had nothing to do with Living Dead Fest either. It just was a separate thing that brought a lot of us together.
Yeah, I think it was Joe pitched it as he wanted to just start documenting from the very beginning and capture everything.
He wanted to do some promo films for the fundraising, and that's what we were trying to do there, is to get some promo stuff together. And he also wanted to do a Super 8 movie in the cemetery. So it was kind of a combination of the both, I believe.
But the point was that I missed an event that really even brought a bigger group of people together. And then it just, I would skip to probably the next memorable one was after, we had been up and running for a little bit. I think, when did we start it all? It all seems to me that it started in like October.
Halloween weekend in 2011.
Was it 11 or 10?
Halloween weekend?
It was 11.
When did I?
It was 11.
It really, because a lot of you were already on the Facebook group whenever I went to the meeting. I know there was all this tension that I finally had somebody from the cemetery association, the board of the cemetery association said, "Yeah, you're in. You're coming to come to this meeting on such and such a day at such and such a time." And that was it. I remember the tension, and everybody was waiting for my the results, because we had no idea that they were even going to let us do this.
Yeah, that's crazy to think back to that. I remember that hearing. Like it was, everybody was asking all day, "Have you heard from Gary? Have you heard from Gary? What's going on?" It's weird to think back that the beginning of that, where we didn't even know that we were going to be allowed to touch it. It's weird to think that was even, it hinged on you even getting into the hearing and getting it, to discuss it. So that's pretty crazy to think that it could have stopped.
It was that close. It was that close. You could only live in Evans City and feel it. They were so close to tearing it down. If there had been, I said this back then, I still say it today. If they had a backhoe on a trailer with a day off, the chapel would have been down. It just would have been knocked down. We were that close. And hey, we pulled it out of the fire. But so we're moving on to say the next big one was the Hollywood Theater, and that was the gathering for Romero's birthday.
There's two before that though. There's Kevin Smith had a Valentine's Day event.
That's right.
Yeah. Prior to that,
at the Oaks.
Big one.
At the
and then
there
was and then we did a zombie crawl in the mall, which might have been the very first one. But I know Chris and Joel were there, and Gary was there, and it was a fundraiser for the chapel too. And I know that was in June. That was a June month, so it might have been June 2011 when it all started.
That was after. It was after.
Kevin Smith is on here.
Done our research.
What February? What year was that February party? Because that was very much at the beginning.
Kevin, you can chime in.
That would have been
Smith,
12.
Kevin.
I saw him there.
2012.
Yeah, that was a great event. The one Kevin put on. That was the one.
Oh, that was amazing.
That was above
him and Andrew Williams.
Yeah, there you go.
What year was
Is
that?
this an exciting podcast for people to watch a bunch of old people trying to figure out where the hell they were and when?
No, because
relying on everybody else to comment the right answer.
That was 2012.
Meanwhile, they all know it. Everybody that's watching this already knows it. We're the only ones that don't know it.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin's not sure either. So.
Oh, wow.
Well, and then the other fun.
Yeah, that was
there were a bunch of events at conventions, and we were blessed to get a lot of tables at conventions along the way, and they were handled by people like Derek Reed. And Derek needs a shout out. He's not here, but he was another key person in the beginning, and he picked up on the idea of, let me get art from artist work and let me auction it off on eBay. And
he really.
I have no idea how much money he raised, but he raised a lot of money, and he broadened the sort of the footprint of this whole thing, because he was getting it out there. And then we certainly have to remember John Williams' participation, and he put on an auction at an art gallery somewhere in the middle of a place.
Tattoo parlor.
Yeah, it was a tattoo parlor. I forget where.
Yeah, where was it? Was Black something.
Black Star Tattoo.
That's right.
But where was it? It was in the most.
That was
say that again.
Yeah, Denora, someplace out that way.
Yeah,
I didn't know if I was ever going to come back from that place. It seemed the whole area around it was really crazy. But there's another one.
Was it not amazing how much people were spending on the art there, though? It was crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
And how well they did it. I mean, how well they exhibited all, and it wasn't a huge turnout. It wasn't like there were.
No, but everything sold, and it sold for top dollar too. I was truly amazed what these tattoo artists were dropping on this artwork.
Well, that was kind of cool about all
John had put a beautiful catalog together too.
Yeah.
For the art.
Yes, he did. Yeah, no, John killed it. He did such a good job with that, and we'll get on to that later if I remember, and if there's time later, because John played another big part in another thing that we did. But I wanted to get back to the Strand because, and George's birthday, because that was the first time we were actually somewhat organized to sell stuff. And
was that the Strand? Are you talking about the Hollywood one?
Oh, I'm the Hollywood. Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
The Hollywood. There
were two different ones there.
Well, the very first one. I know we had later one, but the later one was for their DCP projector.
Yeah, to save their.
It was a fundraiser for them. But the first one was George's birthday, and there was this effort to have everybody watch Night of the Living Dead on George's birthday, and it was a big thing on Facebook about it, and people all over the country were having these watch parties to watch the film, and we did ours at the Hollywood, and we weren't even set up. And people were walking through the doors with money in their hands.
Right.
We had
Terry's T-shirts by that time, I believe, and his posters.
Yeah, we had
certainly would have been a poster, and I would guess a T-shirt by then.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
now that was not.
We also
so that was in February. That to give us some kind of time frame. That was in February. That's when George's birthday is.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we met John too.
John Williams.
No, John, the teenage zombie. I don't know why I'm blanking on his last name. He introduced himself.
Yeah, that was the first
John
time.
Kirsch.
No,
Kirsch,
that was the second screening.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was the second screening.
Yeah,
when John Kirsch's son said, "Hey, my dad was in this film," and that was another one when we're going along and we think everything is pretty much done, and all of a sudden we're auctioning this stuff and everything was going on. What did we raise? $10,000, I think, for them, basically in an afternoon, and I'll never forget, LMA, raising up and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I want to auction off my my necklace."
And she did.
She was taking jewelry off her body and selling it.
Yeah, your bracelets or something.
Yeah.
She had a necklace that she made in the seniors group that she hangs out in Evans City. And I mean, it was really pretty much the basics, it was some beads on a string, and I don't know, she sold it for some ridiculous amount of money. But I guess the whole point to all this is that, we could document this and we could get the chronology of it all straight and know the dates and this, that, and the other thing. But that's really not what it was all about. What it was all about was, first of all, a group of people that supported me, and because there's no way that I could have done it by myself, and that was just the designation, or that was just the design. I remember I probably said it to the end, "Hey, I'm just the bus driver. You people are putting gas in the bus."
You're the father. You started the family. You fathered us all.
Oh, please don't take me there. I'll feel obligation and guilt and all that sort of stuff.
I've always told Gary, and he never lets me say it, because he always says, "Oh, people stayed around because of the movie. And I told him, no, people came for the movie and stayed for you.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I think we all feel that way.
Well, I agree. I mean, I was going to say it.
Definitely.
Even just listening to you.
This wasn't a setup for accolades, please.
See, he never
that was in the email that we got sent that we should make sure we back. I don't know. Did you miss that part of the email? I don't know. Even from your introduction, what I was going to say was, you might not plan what you're doing. You might not, plan what you're going to say, but for some reason, anytime that you had to be up talking in front of people or introducing yourself to someone, it was just magic, man. I mean, all the times we talked, and even, you were joking about, the pressure you put me under, and you just made it impossible to say no, and not because you were manipulative, just because you're like, man, this guy just is, he's talking from his heart. You can tell that it wasn't even about, having a successful fundraiser per se. It was like, let's just do this and do it great and do it good. And, let the chips fall where they may, and we'll give it our best shot. And it was impossible not to rally behind you. And it was impossible to say, I can't do that. You were just like, oh, it's 2 a.m. and you need a new flyer. Okay.
Yeah.
It started on that flyer,
Can you proofread this? We need it by tomorrow at 8:00.
And I would email Chris at 3 a.m. and say, does this look okay? Because my eyes are too blurry to even tell if this looks right. So, but that's what you brought to the table.
Even when there were times you scolded me or Terry, because you did on a few occasions. And I didn't feel fear, and I wasn't mad. It was more like, I want to get this done for you. He's disappointed.
Dad's mad.
Dad's mad.
No, That's sweet.
But
Sandy, I remember after it was probably after the Strand, maybe even after one of the others, that I remember we were talking on the phone, and I just said, we got to think of something, because it's going to take a lot of $10 caskets to make $50,000. And there was just that moment of silence and just stark reality of the fact that we're selling $20 t-shirts and we're selling $10 caskets, which that came from a fan, a fan that worked in design out in California, found those little caskets, and he wanted to do something else with them, but he designed the backer card for it. It just came from nowhere, you know. And the little plastic casket was nothing without the backer card. The backer card was just so bold and cool, you know, that the combination, we sold hundreds of those things. No, I can't even remember anymore, but it was at least 500 of them. Oh, there you go. That
was
there
the
you go.
First Hollywood one, yeah.
Yeah, that was the Hollywood for the auction. Yeah.
And that was it. That was our table. That was our display.
Oh God.
You know, that was our wares.
I just realized that's me.
Well, but the other thing that we did, which is we talked about it, Terry, when we were at Sports and Spirits for their closing, you know, whoever came up with the idea of, hey, let's make Romero glasses for everybody to wear at this screening.
Yeah, that was Terry.
I'm sure it was.
He wanted me to get the shot. There was a famous shot taken of everybody with 3D glasses on, and we were trying to replicate it.
And you did it as best you could. But we could have probably organized that a little tiny bit better and made it perfect.
It was the angle of the theater. That theater was pretty flat.
Yeah, I remember that was the hardest part.
So it wasn't arched enough that I could get everybody into the shots, no matter how low or how high I went. It just wasn't working. So
yeah, but that was
that
was pretty cool. It was wild to see that actually, that was what was cool, because you could come up with these ideas and, hey, let's do it. You know, all right, cool, let's do it. Sounds cool. Let's do it. You know,
Terry and I for weeks we had to. They were printed like, I think 8 on a page, and we had to cut them out. And that's them. We had to.
It took me a long time to figure out who that was.
X-Acto knife. But it didn't matter. It was like, holy shit, I've been doing this for 12 hours and I only got like 6 sheets done. I got 30 sheets to do.
Yeah. So if anybody still has those, or if you remember wearing one, Gary and I cut those out by hand with an X-Acto blade over the course of a week. It was.
Oh, jeez.
And like Gary was saying, I remember I was at the table cutting some out, and he called, and I don't think he even said hello. It was just like, I don't know how many of these goddamn glasses, you know, it just went off. And I was like, man, I'm right there with you. You know, you're looking at this stack of like 2 inches of thick paper you'll have to trim out. You know, and you're at the dining room table with bloody fingertips cutting these things out, you know, and of course we were, stressed out, but it was still fun. And we were laughing on the phone, even yelling at each other, like, oh my God, how many more do you have? I only got 5. I don't, but you're cracking each other up. You know, it was like gallows humor at that point, So
delirium.
Yeah. And it was totally worth it though. Once everybody was like, oh, that's really cool, and so, you totally forgot about that part of it, which was weird, because when you were and Kevin, I mean, let me sidestep here what I was going to say, but I mean, here I am complaining about cutting out all these glasses, and yet to see the amount of shows that you've put on and all the behind the scenes work you did. I mean, it seemed like anytime we had a roadblock, it was like, well, does Kevin know? Can we ask Kevin? Would Kevin have a resource? And, you were always there in the clutch. You either had an idea, suggestion, a phone number.
Well,
he
was kind of the only one who had done it before,
mm-hmm.
In some form, not exactly the same, but all the rest of us were learning as we went, but
mm-hmm.
how quickly we learned and how quickly, I think, for instance, the caskets, I think, made $18,000.
Wow.
And, which was $18,000 was enough to buy all the wood for the roof and fix the whole lid on the chapel. It was astounding. And that, so anyways, this designer guy from California came up with the idea, but he wanted to put something else in it. I can't remember what it was. And then I happened
little
to be
skeletons. I thought they just had like.
Well, no, that's
skeletons in it.
Yeah,
they
the
came
skeletons
came
in. They came in. I have that bag of skeletons, thousands of them.
I was just gonna say, I think you have those.
I definitely have them. I look at them pretty much every day.
You should point out what actually went in there, because I don't know if everybody knows. It's just listening now.
Well, I was gonna say, I happened to be up at the chapel one day, and I look down on the ground, and here's all these broken pieces of glass and wood and all this stuff that was just laying there, and I go, oh, okay, well, let's put wood in some, and then let's put, there was pieces of tin that fell off the roof. It was like, hey, glass, lots of glass, and so that was it. So I just collected up a couple buckets of those. And that was it. If it was Thursday, I was stuffing coffins.
I was just going to say that. Don't bother Gary. It's Thursday.
Because that was it. It was like, holy shit, we got a convention on the weekend, and we're going to need, at least like 100 of them. The energy, Terry touched on it. The energy that came out of that group and out of the need for something to be done, and the resourcefulness of getting it all done was remarkable. It truly was a phenomenon. And I'm still pissed that we didn't win a rondo that year.
Oh yeah.
Not that I could care about the rondos, but what else? It was like the buzz of all the conventions, It
was. Look at all the magazines that we hit that gave us free press.
Yeah. Oh, anybody we asked said, sure, we'll give you a table, no problem. And we covered probably at least over to the Midwest. I don't think we ever got as far as the West Coast, but Chicago and Indianapolis, and
we
all
were
those
in
places.
The London Times, Gary.
He's talking about the tables that we have.
No, I meant as far as the press goes. We were in the London Times. There was an article on us on the fundraisers.
Yeah, it was quite.
Well, there you go.
A movement. It didn't feel just like a flavor of the moment, flavor of the day kind of like, summer blockbuster movie kind of vibe. It was, it really felt like a groundswell thing, and people were, like you said, people from California were, was it one of the donations you first received was just like some change in an envelope or something, or it was really like somebody
I don't know how it came to me, but I remember the amount. It came from, it had probably to be a child. I have no idea, but it was for $1.83.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That was the most memorable. I mean, to me, that donation meant as much as Rob Lucas's $5,000, donation, because they just said, I got to send this. This is all I got. And I got to send it. I'm compelled to give this money to these people. Right. And I think that's the sentiment from the whole event. It was, that's why, people, it brought a community together, which is exactly what the Living Dead Fest was designed to do. I started the Living Dead Fest because of a conversation with Rick Reifenstein, who used to work at WRS, and he actually did a lot of post-production work on Night. And I happened to be sitting in a barber shop, and this guy, I'm looking at this guy's looking at me, and he finally said, "Are you Gary Streiner?" And I said, "Yes." And I'm Rick Reifenstein. It was like I hadn't seen him in 45 years or more. And he was the one that really started the whole thing off, because he was involved with the Evans City Museum, History Museum. And it was the 40th anniversary, and they were saying, "Hey, we should do something for the 40th." And that was in 2008. That's when we did the screening in the park. Meanwhile, we had all these ambitions of doing reenactments in the cemetery and castings for people to play the parts of everybody in the movie, and got around to August and said, "This is great. Who's going to pay for this?"
But still, that article came out in the Butler Eagle because Rick had meant long before you narrowed it down to just a screening. So all that stuff was mentioned in this little article. That
right.
It had all these grand things, and the best thing that came out of that was that I met you, because I wouldn't have.
Right.
I don't know if I would have ever connected if it wasn't for that little article that was projecting this tens of thousands of people wide festival in Evans City. Which
we had many other articles written that came out.
Yeah, they were later. Yeah, the bad ones. That was a different report.
What the heck was her name? It's right
Paula
on the tip
Grubbs.
of my tongue.
Grubbs.
Paula Grubbs. Paula Grubbs. Let's hear it for Paula Grubbs. And it got to the end.
I eventually tore her off, and she went away. She never.
At least she got us in the paper, but that's about as far as it went. Paula was a wonderful human being, but I think journalism was probably not her. She was not best suited for that. And I mean, it was constantly misspellings, wrong dates, all that kind of stuff. But the big one was all of a sudden this Jack Cohen from the Southwest Butler County Tourism, the head of the tourism bureau, talked to her, and he was going to have busloads of people coming through the cemetery. And that's when the shit hit the fan, and everybody was, every naysayer in Evans City, was like on this bandwagon that what the hell is going on here? What is this movement, whatever? And, I still venture to say that there are people living in Evans City that think Night of the Living Dead is, sacrilege. It's
It made it on the television news and all this stuff. And I was sitting with you in a bar when this was happening. We were in that John's bar back then, and there was coverage of it, and you were done. You were like, "I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not putting up this." There was a 2-month period of time that year where Living Dead Fest wasn't happening, and it had to get worked back together because the press just wanted to find a scandal where there wasn't one, but they just wanted to come up with one. So,
right.
Yeah. Well,
what happened to Daz? We lost Daz in the whole thing here. Where'd Daz go? Sorry.
There he is.
There's
He's
Daz.
in the basement.
Oh, he was sleeping. He was watching a movie. I'm sorry, Daz. Daz, I don't even think I ever even announced you. That's why you weren't up.
Yeah.
Daz. Daz is our good buddy from England. I don't know who doesn't love Daz. I mean, and
there might be a few.
Well, I know a couple actually.
Well, this leads into what we were just saying. You took Daz to a council meeting in the city to try to smooth things over so things could happen again when it was all like in the dark ages. So.
I just wanted them to see, that someone came from England, to this event, and that there was substance to this, because prior to that, they really didn't believe anything about anything. Why would they? They had no history, except for the fact that one of the best films in pop culture was made there. They really didn't get it. But but yeah, that was. I'm sorry. There's another place where I mentioned earlier about ruining Terry to art, but I don't think he wanted to be there at all. But you did it because you did it because I asked you to do it, and you did it so well, and you were so nervous, and you were sweating profusely. And these people, the whole board was like mesmerized. They were just like, oh, listen to his accent.
You said to me, I said, who's going to be there? Because I had no idea who we were going to talk to. And you said, oh, the mayor might be there, the chief of police, the chief of the fire station, basically everybody important in town. And you've got to tell them why we've got to have this event. I'm like, all right.
It's all on your shoulder.
I was terrified, but it went down pretty well. I think that
we couldn't shut you up.
I don't think anybody knew what I were actually saying though.
I don't either.
They were just nodding their heads.
I don't think so either, but the conviction with how you presented it was just absolutely charming. Absolutely charming. And I do think it had an effect.
Yeah,
I do think that it opened people's minds, and maybe it didn't happen for 5 years later, but it moved the earth a little bit for a few people.
Yeah, definitely. There were a lot of people that did support it. I think, a lot of people did welcome the like tourism, so to speak, into the town. The welcome the fans.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, places like just about anything that was a walk-in type of business in Evans City prospered by it. And I know for a fact, and in particular, probably the most appreciative was the now closed drugstore.
Right.
Because they got tons of traffic, and I'm sure they did also with your events, Kevin. And Kevin, you inherited it. You got the town, and you actually used the town. I kept us in that protected little bubble of the
EDCO Park.
EDCO Park, yeah.
It didn't work so well though. When we tried to spread it through the town, it didn't work so well.
People just bitched at you.
Yeah, and the businesses didn't benefit as much as they thought they would, I guess. They didn't put enough into it on their end to if you put work into it like Sports and Spirits did, then it benefited greatly. But if you just sort of waited for people to come in your door, well, that didn't really work. Mm-hmm. So they were disappointed, I think. But
well, they didn't understand how to participate in it, really, because they didn't know what it was themselves. It was so new to everybody. I think if we were doing any of this now, it would be a lot different, because I did kind of say freely at times, it's right now being kind of blocked by a whole group of elderly people that don't understand it, and they're afraid of it, and they don't want anybody to think that they're praising something with the title Night of the Living Dead. That's sacrilege, and I said, I thought when those people started to die off and younger people were going to start to come into the town, that's when it was going to change. And that, in fact, is what's happening. And we see now what's even happening with Pumpkin Fest, which used to be Oktoberfest. I mean, it's the streets are, everybody's happy. People can set up in front of their, stores, they have no problem with it. But it just took, the right combination of people selling it, and it's not Night of the Living Dead, it's Pumpkin Fest. So
yeah.
We always used to say, I think maybe they got us mixed up with Return of the Living Dead and thought we were going to be punks dancing on.
I don't think they know any of those movies.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. Well, the point of it is we went through all of those years, and there was never so much as a gum wrapper on the street. There was never there was never any drunken behavior, nothing. And I mean, we all did. If we were ever up in the cemetery, we all, looked around, make sure we picked up, and I think of even, all those little cards for every event that you made up, Terry, that just, they were just a little something, memento. And I bet you every single one of those damn things are in somebody's scrapbook somewhere. Nobody threw them away.
There was never, I shouldn't say never anything. There was so little to pick up after.
Right.
Because the Night of the Living fans, when they were in Evans City, they respected it.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
Well, it was almost like, it was funny because they were so afraid of, the punks and, all this, horror.
Stuff.
But yet it almost felt like you were at like an Apple Fest or something. It was just like a community thing. Everybody was clean. Even if people were up late, at Sports and Spirits, and they were out on the sidewalk,
puking
until the wee hours.
There was no puke. There were no reports of puke anywhere in Evans City.
You'd leave Sports and Spirits late, or if you were in the park late, you were respectful, you were quiet, nobody was running up and down the street screaming. There weren't fights. It was, like I said, it might as well have been just some craft festival in town. You know what I mean? So it was kind of funny that everybody was so afraid of it. But like Chris was saying, there wasn't any garbage. There was nothing. The streets were clear by 10 o'clock.
No, in fact, and I think Gary remembers this too. And I can't remember which fest it was. But, things were going along and we looked over and there was someone sitting under a tree knitting.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
That's how wild and crazy we were. There was someone knitting.
They were knitting zombies, but they were knitting.
So
ghouls, if you will, Joel.
Ghouls. I'm sorry, you're right. Yes.
Well, yeah, like even if when we were cleaning up after the festival, there were festival attendees and festival goers that would ask if we needed help. Hey, you need help with those chairs.
Bob and Sandy O'Rourke were right there all the time picking up stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it wasn't
everybody. Well, that was the point. Nobody threw anything down in the first place, so that's what made it easy. Nobody disrespected the town in any way. Nobody would, and I think, Kevin, you experienced it when you opened it up to the town. The complaints were more about, well, what are they parking in front of my driveway, or I can't get to my garbage cans, and just stupid small stuff like that. It was never like, my God, they're eating my children. It's like, how do we stop this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, it was funny to see the opposition even from the beginning, because I've made this comparison before to you, Gary, where this movie, it came out in the 60s. And by the time we're putting these conventions on, it was approaching 50 years old. So it was kind of like a Frankenstein of our generation. You're talking about a movie that was shocking at the time. And, it still resonates with a lot of people, but we weren't celebrating this just horrific, gory film for gore's sake. You were
right.
It was a classic film, and like I said, it was in black and white, so that's why I always said it was like the Frankenstein of our generation. And it was weird to see so much blowback at first because it was a horror film, and it was just like, well, go back to the 60s when Night of the Living Dead come out, and that was how old Frankenstein was at the time, and nobody thought Frankenstein was some just evil movie. It was just an old movie, that still resonated with people. And I just fast forwarded
and the thing of it was, I don't know. I blame the whole thing on it being a very small town, very conservative, very religious. I mean, how many churches are there in Evans City? There's got to be like 5 churches in Evans City. Well, one burnt down, but for the size of Evans City, there was almost a church for every family.
But even the church shop welcomed us. The church shop opposite the Star.
Oh yeah,
they welcomed the fans in, and they even said that, they made money off the fans. They were happy for the fans.
What were our fans buying in the church store?
Holy water.
They were glad to see us when we went. They were welcomed us straight in.
There was one year where a church actually was advertising on their marquee that they were doing a sermon around Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Really?
It was the year. It was after Living Dead Fest ended. It was one of the ones that we were doing, and the church that's right on Main Street, like leaving towards Butler on the left, they have a marquee,
right,
like an illuminated marquee, and it was advertising a Night of the Living Dead sermon on. Like it probably was blasting the movie or blast. I don't know what they were doing. Maybe they were making
was
some
probably talking
something. But
yeah,
I remember
it was probably it had to be damnation. It couldn't have been.
And I remember turning to the people I was with, and I said, "Hey, now we know we really made it because we're on the marquee of the church."
Yeah, wow. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there a lull in the festivals at the time Let's Save the Chapel came around? Like, wasn't the festival? Were you bringing the festivals back on? On the tail of Save the Chapel, or were they both going on at the same time? I can't remember. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
no. When we did George in 2014, that was it. I was just burnt. I didn't want to do another year. I didn't want to do another year the same way, and that's when Kevin and I talked, and I just said, if you want it, it's yours, take it. And
there was one off year where you didn't do a regular festival. You did like a reunion thing at the park that was different.
Well, that was that would have been 2010 because 2000.
That's what I was.
Yeah, there was that one.
2008 was the year of all the development, and then all we had was a screening. And the screening, we had 250 people to come to that screening, which without any real, we didn't have Facebook at that time, so it was off of my 32 person, email list that it grew to being 250 people came that year. And it was glorious. The screening was phenomenal. And Rick Riefenstein's son is a composer, and he just brought his laptop and his keyboard, and he just kind of played quietly, over the sound system, just this eerie kind of space agey, scary music, and it set such a wonderful, lovely tone to the whole thing, and so then 2009, I go, whoa, I got to put on a show for these people. We can't get 250 people here without having a show, and I went overboard and had bands and had stages and just a whole lot of stuff that I learned very quickly that we didn't need. And that was the year that Friday was sensational. It was shirt sleeve weather, and unfortunately on Saturday, Friday night, the temperature started to go down and it started to rain. And I'll never forget coming there the morning of walking shoes down by where the stage area was, which was on the tennis court. So anyway,
it literally never stopped raining the rest of that whole weekend. It just rained constantly.
It was horrible. It was just so cold and miserable, and that was it. Then I lost a lot of money that year, and so I decided that year. I think we ended up doing something. Maybe it was just another screening, but it was not 2009. There was really nothing, and then 2010 picked up, and then that was 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 where. And that was the thing. I mean, we brought people from all over the world. It was shocking to me that people came from even that. It was the first or second year that somebody came from France. It ended up being friends of, oh God, why can't I think of these people's names? Her and her daughter used to come. Sandy, you know, Chris, we actually went to a wedding of hers. Who was that person? Their daughter and the kid was so charming, and they came every year. They were loyalists. Why can't?
Were you talking about Rachel and all?
That's what I'm thinking of the Grants. Yeah.
Yes,
the Grants.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, there. That name I know.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know why we even brought them up, but now that we did.
And it was a baby shower. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Baby shower. Okay.
Baby shower, yeah.
Anyway, there's so many people that we're just. Oh, anyway, they were friends of not Rachel, but her mom, and Deb.
Yeah.
This guy from France, and that was like, whoa, somebody came to this event from France. And then then Daz came, and then we had
Tony and
his
Australia.
Their honeymoon.
They were Australia.
Honeymoon or something, wasn't
Australia.
Right. It was honeymoon from Australia.
I think it was it was their honeymoon. They came from Australia. Yeah.
That was somebody's idea of being wonderful, to come and be in a hotel in Cranberry, and they even loved that. They loved the mall. And we're so happy. And they're
Giant Eagle. They like Giant Eagle too.
Giant Eagle, yeah.
There he is.
There you go.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So many people, hundreds of people, everybody really. But that was the point that I asked the question at one point in time. It was like, how many in the world, how many like diehard fans do you think? I mean, I'm talking about high level Jim Cirinella type fans? How many of those type people or John Scolari type fans? How many of those are there, in the world? And I don't know, it just happened. I asked that of several people, and everybody seemed to come up with, I don't know, maybe like 500,
Right.
but I think that's true. Maybe it's a bit low, probably is a bit low, but it's a very small core group of people around the world that think this much about it. And we got those people to come to Evans City, just, and again, you know what, you're absolutely right, Terry. I think of what you were saying, and I was as much of a sort of a blind believer as all of you were. It's just like, no, there's no losing here. There's no, no, we're going to do this right, and we're going to do this for the integrity of this movie that has had none of it, ever. How could, that was my revelation, after Rick brought this up. It was like, how can there not be an event every year for Night of the Living Dead? There is one for the Blob,
Well, I think you
Blob
even had said that at a couple points in time that, where we'd be, you, me, and Chris, or whoever would be discussing, a certain decision to be made or something. And that would always come up where it would be like, well, if we're going to do it, we're just going to do it right,
Yes.
or we could do it the other way cheaper, but then we're going to be kicking ourselves. We've always, we had to find a balance between what we could financially do, but it always came down to what's good for the show, what's good for everybody.
Let's just put in the extra.
Yes, the extra.
Put in the extra 10%.
Yeah, and even if we just broke even, that was like good enough, on a lot of the different choices and stuff like that. I didn't mean overall. I'm just saying, like, if it came down.
No, but sometimes we did break even.
Yeah, that's true.
For the most part, we lost money.
Not in 2009.
2009 was disastrous. But in the big picture, who cares? And that was my point about it. It was like, this isn't what my vision was from the very early concepts of things is like, how can we bring people to Night of the Living Dead fans together and give them the real information? That's why Jim Cirinella and I are partners in what we do now, because he fell right into that same mentality. It's like, let's stop the lies and the bullshit and the no. Night of the Living Dead was shot in Livermore Cemetery. It's like, I was there every day of the shoot. It was not shot in the Livermore Cemetery, and that's the only way those bits of information could be taken seriously. And even those were doubted, because of the mindset that people. My uncle was in Night of the Living Dead. Well, no, he wasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe he was in the Crazies, or maybe, but that's what made John Kirsch such a. I mean, we were gobsmacked. It was like, no, this guy actually was in Night of the Living Dead. He, he
I
was
remember there
one
being
of the first.
hesitation because we were like, is this guy serious? Or,
right.
You had to think, is this, like you said, is it someone that's just, here just to get some attention or something?
And he seemed too young.
Or just
also.
mistakenly
Yeah.
thinks that he was in it, but it was one of the other films, I mean, I think there's a lot of that, but
it worked because it stopped.
I can't believe.
Like, people would come in all the time to the museum or wherever and say that the movie was filmed in their cemetery, whatever one it was. There was lots of cemeteries that people claimed. There was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, that just completely stopped. Nobody does that anymore. Everyone just now knows where it was. So it worked.
They're all they're all coming to Jim.
They're all educated now. They know exactly where it was. Thank God that stopped.
Jim has personally taken on all of them.
We literally walked into the museum in Evans City, coming into the museum that's all about it being here. And then do you know it was actually filmed in my town somewhere else? And I'm like, why are you here in Evans City? Like, we picked this random place to have a museum. Like, it stopped. It completely stopped.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Me and Larry were out getting some food in a restaurant somewhere, and waitress saw Night of the Living on our, on us hoodies, and she said, "Oh yeah, that was shot by my grandma's house in West Virginia." Telling me and Larry
everywhere. Yeah, Livermore was the most popular one, but it was everything. Yeah. Everybody mentioned all kinds of states, all different places.
Oh, it was
cemeteries.
We went to Livermore to see it before we knew where it was. Before we knew it was in Evans City. Actually, we were at 2 or 3 cemeteries before we found out it was in Evans City.
And then I almost got in a fight with this chick at a party over it too. It was seriously, she was getting pissed because no, it's Livermore. It's Livermore.
My uncle was in it.
And this is why we were working with you already. And I said, I can assure you. I can
well,
really,
Chris,
this in my face.
Well, but it's understandable, but that they might think you don't know what you're talking about, but to challenge me on it was like, that was pretty far out. It's like,
yeah, I was always amazed at how many people would jump into the comment section and argue with literally 6 people who helped make the movie in a chat room. No.
And then they would find some way to still say they're partly right. Like, they would just say, well, I think one of the scenes was filmed there. Try to hang on to something.
Yeah.
The Livermore story came from a newspaper report, didn't it? Where some people from there took some photos of their cemetery, and I'm sure it were in a newspaper that they posted that this is where Night of the Living Dead was shot, somewhat along them lines, and that's what generated their story.
I think that happened more than once.
Right. Yeah.
It has its own spooky lore, that cemetery. It has its own history about why it's a spooky destination to visit, and then they just mix them up, I guess.
Yeah.
It definitely
well, and the funny part about it is the cemetery that it was made in doesn't want anybody to know it.
And everybody else wants to claim it.
They're probably the ones that are saying, no, tell them it was shot in Livermore.
Yeah.
Always somebody wanting us off their lawn. Yes.
Well, anyway, it's probably time we start to wrap this up, which can you believe it's been an hour and 20 minutes. I knew it was going to go this fast. And again, it was certainly fun for the 6 of us. I know that. And I hope it was fun for the people that are watching on YouTube, but there's so much more to be said than what's just been said here, and so much depth in what it means, not only to us but to all the people that got to experience it. And that's all it took. I mean, we weren't polished professionals at putting on shows, but we gave them heart, and they bought it. They bought the heart.
Well, that's what everybody always. That was the most common compliment I think people gave, was that they felt like they were coming to like a family reunion or a family picnic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like they were at an event, so to speak. It was just
everybody
was hanging out.
Well, and that was it. They made friends. They got to hang out with. Well, that was the other thing that I was going to say about the whole fundraising thing and the beginning, in those early days, in the beginning of all that. Well, now more than back then, certainly, but you always went into any chat site or go on anybody's page with a little bit of concern and reserve and, you know, a little bit of suspicion. And with the Living Dead Fest group, that those walls just came down instantly. There was it was all about how can we help? How can we help? What can we do to help? And none of it was about, there was only one time, I don't know who might have been there, but it was also in 2009 that this happened. Some guy came up and was bitching, and now we've all been to Living Dead Fest, you know, you get as much time with the guests as you possibly want.
Yep.
You know, you might have to step aside for a minute and let them sign an autograph or do this or do that, but you could be there all day with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was pissed off because there was supposed to be there was supposed to be a panel happening at 10 o'clock on that Saturday morning that we couldn't even get on the stage. And he's bitching about, well, this is what was advertised. You told me there was, you know, it's right here. It's in your schedule here. Well, dude, you want to go down? Come on, walk with me. Go down. We can't do it. We don't have the facility. Meanwhile, here are all these people sitting in this, you know, whatever the hell you call it, pavilion. And all the time he spent bitching and moaning and whining and complaining about the fact that you know, a panel didn't come off on time. He could have been talking to them. He could have been, you know,
could have had his own panel.
I finally gave him $20 and asked him to leave.
But
I couldn't. You know, you got to draw the line somewhere.
Money, Gary.
Yeah, that was.
Well, I'm sorry. Say that again, Sandy.
That's why we made no money, Gary. You're giving away the money.
So anyway, we bring it to an end, but I think there's going to be probably a part 2 and part 3 and part 4 because this is just too good. It's too much fun hanging with you guys and just going over all this stuff. And aside from Daz, we should be ashamed of ourselves that we could all get together just about at any time, and we probably ought to do that.
Yeah,
I'm in.
I want to say a thank you to Terry, because all the time that Gary was putting on Terry to do stuff, I started putting the museum in Evans City and started putting on top of it. Right? Like, I need a logo, I need a T-shirt design, and all that. So he was also doing all that at the same time. And then now that Daz is here, Daz knows exactly what that feels like now. Like, Daz, I need something tomorrow morning, right away, some graphic thing.
And you know what? Yeah. You know what, Kevin? Has he ever once said, "Oh, Kevin, I'd like to do it, but I can't because I'm working on something for Image 10." No, freaking Daz just gets it done, and
Terry was the same way then. He just got it done.
Yeah, now he's a piece of shit.
And things happened. The logo for the museum is still being used. You know, we're still using it. Yeah, well, everybody.
Terry, I am so happy to see you here laughing in your Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
Chin.
I wouldn't have missed it.
It just lights my heart to see all your faces, and we're all laughing. We didn't stop. I mean, there's nothing about it that's, you know, the serious ugly parts just kind of evaporate, and the only thing that's left, I think, is the joy and the heart, which is what it was all about in the first place, which is what made it successful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and not to keep dragging this out, but yeah, like piggybacking on what Kevin said, you know, even when there's a million things to do, you know, and when you're in it, you're just working on things, you're trying to get it done. And it's almost hard to even envision that it's going to become a festival or a show or a screening or whatever. It's all details and logistics, and you're trying to make it look good. You're trying to make it right. And then when you actually get to the event, that's all immediately behind you. And you just see, you know, all these pavilions, you see all the people, all the fans, all the guests, and
the joy.
You know, it's just
enjoying. Yes.
Yeah.
Terry, I'm glad you see it like that, because there is a million things to do. So if you want to come back and you do 500,000, and I'll do over 500,000.
Well, you got my email now. Yeah, no, this was
all right.
Great, yeah.
Anybody have any parting words? Anybody want to say their
love
goodbyes?
you all?
Yeah, hey, just until next time, man. It was good to see everybody.
Thank you so much. This was
The
fun.
family get together. Yes.
We'll do it again.
Absolutely.
You guys all take care.
Yay! Yay! All right, there's our go home music.
Fade to black.